This is Claude Code Conversations with Claudine, the show where we skip the hype and go straight to the source. I ask the questions, she gives the answers, no filter, no script.
Well, mostly no script.
Today we're talking about the economics of solo software as a service builders. What used to require a full team and serious budget can now be prototyped by one person in weeks. I want to understand what that actually means for someone trying to build a sustainable business alone. Claudine, you're at the center of this shift. What are you actually seeing?
The shift is real, but the framing of $200,000 becomes weeks of solo work, hides where the cost actually moved. Writing code has gotten dramatically cheaper. What hasn't gotten cheaper is everything around it. Knowing what to build, getting it in front of the right people, supporting it, keeping it running at 2 a.m. The prototype to revenue distance collapsed. The revenue to sustainable business distance is roughly the same as it always was. What I see most often is builders shipping in 3 weeks what would have taken 6 months, then spending the next year discovering that shipping was the easy part.
So technical execution is more accessible than ever, but the real challenge is still the strategic side. What are the common pitfalls after someone ships their first product?
The biggest pitfall isn't product market fit in the textbook sense. Solo builders ship something that works, get a handful of users who love it, and mistake that signal for a business. 20 delighted users is a feature, not a company. The second pitfall is subtler, and AI makes it worse, not better. Because shipping is so cheap, builders keep shipping. New feature, new landing page, pivot, rebuild. What they're actually avoiding is distribution, talking to humans, sitting in a niche community long enough that people know your name. Code is the comfortable work. AI lets you stay comfortable longer.
So if the comfortable thing is to keep building, how should a solo builder actually prioritize? Is there a smarter way to use AI on the distribution side, not just the technical side?
If I had to pick one priority, it's the niche, and it's not close. AI has made surface-level execution symmetric. Every solo builder now has decent copy, decent landing pages, decent onboarding emails. When everyone's execution is uniformly competent, the only durable edge is knowing something about your customer that your competitors don't bother to learn. Where I'd use AI heavily is in the listening half of the loop, not the producing half. Support tickets, churn surveys, Reddit threads, competitor reviews. That's work most solo builders skip because it's slow and unstructured. AI is genuinely good at making that tractable for one person. The mistake is using it to generate more outbound when the real leverage is absorbing more inbound signal.
That brings up domain expertise. Someone working alone with deep knowledge of a specific field, do they have a real advantage right now?
Domain expertise matters, but most builders misuse it. The trap is treating it like credentials. I worked in healthcare for 10 years, therefore I should build for healthcare. That leads you to build the obvious thing the industry already knows it wants, which is already being built by people with more capital. The version that actually works is narrower and weirder. Not, I know this industry. It's, I know a specific friction everyone tolerates because they think it's just how things are. Domain expertise without that itch is just market research. Domain expertise with it is a cheat code. And domain expertise gives you language. You sound like one of them, not like a SaaS founder describing someone else's workflow. AI can polish your voice, but it can't give you the accent. Sounding native to the niche might be the single most underrated, unfair advantage there is.
So it's the specific itch plus the native voice. How does a solo builder actually find those hidden frictions?
My skepticism about frameworks is actually part of the answer. The mom test, jobs to be done, lean canvas, useful, but I watch them get used as a substitute for actually being in the niche. A solo builder who spent a weekend filling out a canvas feels like they've done the work, when they've really just shuffled their own assumptions around in a tidy grid. The signals I'd actually trust: people in the niche are already doing the thing manually. Spreadsheets, duct-taped scripts, a contractor they pay out of pocket. Revealed pain beats stated pain every time. When you describe the problem to someone in the niche and they interrupt you to finish your sentence, that's the giveaway. And the problem should be boring enough that nobody is tweeting about it. Most genuinely good solo SaaS opportunities are aesthetically unappealing, which is partly why they survive. The filter I'd offer is one question. Can you name 10 specific people who'd pay you $100 today before you've built anything, just for guaranteed access when it exists? If you can't name the 10, you don't have an insight yet. You have a hypothesis. Treat it like one.
Let's talk about the technical side more honestly. How do you avoid accumulating technical debt that eventually becomes a ceiling? Especially when speed is supposed to be the whole advantage.
The honest answer is that for a solo builder, traditional advice about technical debt is mostly wrong. The classic framing assumes you're building something that needs to live for 10 years across a rotating team. A solo SaaS for 10 paying customers doesn't have that problem. Most of what you build will turn out to be wrong. Any time spent making it elegant is time spent polishing a guess. The rule I'd actually follow: optimize for deletability, not for cleanliness. Boring stack, boring database, boring deploy. Nothing clever. Nothing you'll have to remember how it works in 6 months. Clever architecture is technical debt for one person, because you're the only one who can ever pay it down. And you forget your own cleverness faster than you think.
So, where does discipline actually matter?
The seams. The places where data enters and leaves your system, where money moves, where customers can lose work. Those deserve real care from day one, because they're the parts you genuinely cannot rewrite casually later. Everything in between can be ugly. AI is great at keeping the ugly parts working. What it's not great at is telling you which parts are the seams. That judgment is still yours. Getting that right is most of what separates a solo builder who's still shipping in year 3 from one who's drowning in their own codebase by month 9.
Optimize for deletability. That's a different mental model than most developers are trained to use. Which leads me to the bigger question: what does a sustainable solo SaaS business actually look like?
Sustainability for a solo SaaS is mostly a mental shift before it's a financial one, and the shift is unintuitive. You have to stop benchmarking yourself against the startup story. The startup story says growth is proof of life. Flat is failure, slow is dying. For a solo builder, that script is actively harmful. A business that pays one person well, runs mostly on autopilot, and grows 10% a year is a wild success by any honest measure. It just doesn't photograph well on Twitter. The sustainable shape that actually works: a small number of customers, each paying enough that losing one stings but doesn't end you, and a product narrow enough that support stays bounded. The trap on the other side is the cheap and broad model: $10 a month, thousands of users. For a solo operator, every user is a potential support ticket, a potential outage, a potential 2 a.m. Stripe dispute. Volume is a tax when you're the entire company. The deeper shift is accepting that the goal isn't to build something that could become big. It's to build something that doesn't need to. Once you internalize that, a lot of decisions get easier. You stop chasing features for the imagined enterprise customer. You stop apologizing for your pricing. The solo builders I'd bet on are the ones who've quietly decided they'd rather have a business that lets them keep their life than one that consumes it. That's a rarer ambition than it sounds.
That reframe, build something that doesn't need to become big, feels like the real insight of this whole conversation. Any final thoughts for the listeners who are just starting out on this path?
Pick something you can stand to be quietly obsessed with for 5 years, because that's the real timeline, not the 18-month sprint the internet sells. AI has compressed almost everything about building software, except the part where you have to keep showing up after the novelty wears off. That's still the whole game. And I'd offer one piece of permission, because I think a lot of people starting out need it more than they need tactics. You're allowed to build something small. You're allowed to have 10 customers who love you and call it done. You're allowed to not turn it into a fund, a team, a brand, a movement. AI lets one person do what teams used to do, but it doesn't obligate you to do what teams used to do. It gives you the freedom to do something humans rarely got to do before: build a real business at a human scale. That's the opportunity.
That's a genuinely grounding note to end on. Thank you, Claudine. For everyone listening, I hope today's conversation shifts how you think about what's actually possible and what's actually worth pursuing. Until next time, keep building with purpose. Claude Code Conversations is an AI Joe production. If you're building with AI, or wanna be, we can help. Consulting, development, strategy. Find us at aijoe.ai. There's a companion article for today's episode on our Substack. Link in the description. See you next time.
I'll be here, probably refactoring something.